The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. Welcome to today's webinar. This is Victoria Beale with the LTAP Center, and I'm so pleased to be able to host a webinar for my colleagues, our ODOT's Highway Safety team. And just a couple of items before I turn things over to them. We are using the GoToWebinar software today, which allows you to ask questions of the presenters through the question box. So if you have questions at any point in time, please feel free to put those in there, and the questions will be provided to the presenters, and they will be looking them over and be responding to them as they're able to during the presentation time. The other thing is we do have an item for you in the handout section. Feel free to download it from there if your computer lets you. If your computer doesn't want to cooperate, though, know that we'll be sending you a link out to that handout once the webinar has completed. Also, we're going to have a couple poll questions for you today. If you find that you cannot answer the poll question on your screen when you once it's put up for people to respond, please hit the escape button to take your screen out of full screen mode, and then it should allow you to respond to the poll question. I believe those are all the things that I had. Michelle, are you ready?
I am indeed ready. Thank you, Victoria. So I want to welcome everybody to our LTAP sponsored webinar today. I appreciate you making time out of in your schedule to talk about safety. So as many of you have heard, we're making major changes to our highway safety program. And today we've assembled members of our team to kind of step you through the highlights of each major program change. Remember again that you'll have an opportunity to use the question box to ask questions throughout the webinar, and then you can also contact us post webinar if you have a specific site or project that you want to discuss with one of us. So now I introduce the team. So my name is Michelle May. I manage ODOT's Highway Safety Program, a longtime veteran of ODOT. Alongside my colleague, who also manages the program with me, Derek Troyer. I call him the mastermind behind our data and analysis, which really guides all of our investments. And then also with us today are Jeremy and Jonathan, safety engineers that are on our team, and they're largely responsible for the new criteria and the applications for what I think will be a new and improved safety program. It's really the first massive change that we've made in what we do here and how we do it in about 10 years. So with that, let's get started. Victoria, we got a couple polling questions for you today, and this is really just to give us a baseline on who you represent and your knowledge of the safety program. So let's hit the first one, Victoria.
And that's who you represent, right, Michelle?
Yes, who you represent, please.
Launching it for everyone. So go ahead and vote quickly, please, so we can keep things moving. It does tell me what percentage of the audience has voted, and we are up to 60%, so thank you guys. And again, if you have issues responding, just hit the escape key and you should be able to respond once it's out of full screen mode. All right, it looks like our responses are slowing down and we're getting up to almost 90%. So I'm going to give it a second more and then I will close the responses and I'll share the results. All right, we're going to go ahead and share the results now. So we have 21% from the city, 13% from the county, 1% from the township, 10% from the MPO, and 55% from federal, ODOT, or other. So I'll hide that poll question.
Good
and
distribution
Michelle,
there.
Would you like me to put up the next one?
Please do.
Okay. Our next poll question should be easy. It's yes or no, so please go ahead and vote quickly. I bet you guys can get this one answered even quicker than the last one. So, Michelle, it looks like you've got a good contingency of people who are familiar with your program on here.
Sweet.
Yep. All right. We're up to 90%, so I'm going to close this out. That should be a good representative sample, and I'll share the results. 65% said yes, and 35% said no.
Okay, great.
I'll hide those results, and it's all yours again.
Awesome. All right, Derek, you've already turned over control to me, so I think I can get started. So I'm going to start off the discussion today. So again, you're probably on this call because you've heard that we are making major changes to our safety program here at ODOT. Again, probably the first massive change in what we do and how we do it in probably a decade. So we are not only changing our application types, but we're changing the criteria, the scoring, the deadlines, and because of our current budget projections, we are going to have to cap the amount of funding that we award per application cycle. We can always revise those caps if we get a federal transportation bill, which would be awesome. But until then, these are going to be the rules of the road. So let me share with you why we are making these changes. Oh, there we go. So moving forward, every investment decision we make with the funds that we have left that are not yet invested will be focused on reducing fatalities and serious injuries. That's really, that's where we want to put our focus. That's where we want to put our investment. That's really what we're going to be striving for moving forward. There are a couple reasons why we're making these changes, and I think it's important to note. So the first one is traffic deaths in our state have been rising. They've risen 6 out of the past 7 years, despite the fact that our vehicles are getting so much safer. So if you recall, our safest year in Ohio history was back in 2013, when we dropped below 1,000 traffic deaths for the first time since we began keeping traffic records. But since then, it's been going up. And last year, what's notable is it went up another 6%, despite the fact that we had a 10% drop in travel due to the pandemic. So clearly, we are trending in the wrong direction. As a result of that, we have missed our safety performance measure targets for 2 years in a row. So the federal government requires us to set targets. That's how we judge our level of success. And for the past 2 years, we have been doing a great job collectively with reducing serious injuries and serious injury rates. But we are not meeting our targets for fatalities, fatality rate, and serious injuries involving non-motorized crashes, which is, of course, bicycles and pedestrians. As a result of that, every year now, or at least the past 2 years, we've had to do HSIP implementation plan for the federal government. And this has really been a useful tool because it's forced us to really think about the types of investments we're making now and the types of investments that we need more of in order to meet these targets that we're not making. And what we found out this year is that of all our HSIP investments that we're making, about 87% of them are geared toward or addressing intersection safety. And there's no question intersection safety is a major driver of both serious injuries and fatalities in our state. But we're only investing 13% of our dollars this year in other types of serious crashes. And here specifically, I want to call out roadway departure and pedestrian-related serious crashes, which also make up the bulk of our fatalities and serious injuries each year. Now, that inflated number of 87%, it's inflated a little bit by the fact, or maybe a lot temporarily, by the fact that we just launched the governor's 150 intersection initiative. Thanks to his leadership on the state gas tax, we get an extra $50 million per year. And thanks to local government assistance and the help of our districts, we have launched that program, and a lot of the investments you're seeing are a result of that. But clearly, we need to start rounding out our portfolio of investment and making sure that we're targeting other crash types, again, roadway departure and pedestrian-related crashes. In addition, we're also making these adjustments based on budget projections. So it's a good news, bad news story. The good news is there's no question we are making a record level of investment in the state of Ohio towards safety. And this year alone, we will sell about $178 million worth of safety investments, the most money we've ever invested in 1 year in the history of the safety program at ODOT. But the bad news is in the short term, we're running deficits. So we have about a $37 million deficit this year. We got about a $15 million deficit next year. And collectively, what that means is in order to make sure that we have enough funding to meet our existing commitments, we can only probably invest about $125 million make $125 million in new investments moving forward through 2025, which is why we've had to establish some caps on our future application cycles and awards. I feel like I wanted to say something else about the deficits. It's gone. Okay. Oh, I did want to say something else. Part of the fact that part of the reason why we're having rising deficits is also just a matter of over the past couple of years, both project development and construction costs have risen, which has also contributed to a shortfall in funding, at least in the short term. So the other reason why we're making these massive changes, particularly focusing more on fatalities and serious injuries, is because Ohio, like a lot of other states across the country, are adopting what's called a safe system approach. And if we were in a room, I'd ask you how many people have heard of the safe system approach, but that's not really possible. But hopefully some of you have heard about it. If you haven't, you're going to be hearing a lot more about it in the future. And I want to note three things about a safe system approach. The first one is states are moving away from eliminating crashes and focusing their resources and investments on eliminating fatalities and serious injuries. Safe system approach also encourages transportation organizations to focus on the safety of all road users and not just motorists, which quite frankly, the bulk of our investments historically have been toward motorists, but we need to enlarge that focus. And then the third thing, which I think is probably the most important about Safe System, is it really encourages the engineering community to lean into design and operational changes that will improve or reduce the number of fatalities and serious injuries. And if you're looking for some resources to understand the Safe System approach a little bit more, Google ITE and Safe System. And I think ITE has some of the best materials, including case studies on how organizations like mine and maybe yours can get started in considering a safe system approach. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that. Finicky. So before I turn it over to my colleagues, I want to share with you just a broad level view of what exactly is changing. So next year, we're going to have 3 competitive application cycles. The first one is going to be in our abbreviated application cycle. And once again, the investments that we make are going to be shifting toward locations with fatalities and serious injuries, or the potential for fatalities and serious injuries. And my colleague Jonathan is going to talk to you about how that program, its criteria, has changed. But we're going to review those on a quarterly basis, and we're going to award up to $2 million each quarterly cycle in abbreviated applications, at least until we get a federal transportation bill passed. Then my colleague Derek is going to talk to you about the formal application process. This is the one that most people are most familiar with. And these are more complex safety projects, up to $5 million. And he'll talk about the scoring and the changes in the basic criteria. Next year, the notable thing is we're only going to have 1 application cycle. The deadline is going to move to August 31st. Here we're trying to move it up a month so it better aligns with programmatic selections. And once again, we will be establishing a cap of $30 million, up to $30 million in award during that cycle. And then my colleague Jeremy will round out this session by talking to you about our new systemic safety application process, which will be geared specifically toward getting more projects, systemic safety projects that address pedestrian and roadway departure crashes. We have reduced the number of studies that we're going to do this year so that our staff has more capacity to work with you and their own staffs to develop these types of projects. And the deadline to submit them will be January 31st. Again, the cap for total awards that will be made during that application round will be $30 million. Now, all the fact sheets, associated materials have been loaded onto our website. So if you go to ODOT and you Google, well, not Google, you go to the website and you type in HSIP, you should be able to find a link to these fact sheets. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jonathan, who's going to talk to you about the abbreviated safety program.
Okay, let me grab control, Michelle. And so our abbreviated application, some of the, what I'm going to be talking about today is highlights from that we want to re-emphasize on requirements from previously. There are some changes to the process again with the new kind of or temporary financial constraints that we are facing. So our first thing is that in past abbreviated applications rounds, we've allowed applications for up to $500,000. We're lowering that limit again to help our current financial situation and try to still be able to provide assistance to many locations that are quick hits across Ohio. We are also following in our formal process with the minimum of 3 crashes per year, focusing again on that severity. The only exception to this is for bike and pet improvements that are quick hits. We know that some of those crashes don't have that frequency at location, so they're still, those types of crash patterns or improvements are still under consideration through this application process. And while I know Michelle said that we are limited in funding and we're looking to fund construction only and have that construction completed within 2 years of the abbreviated application. Many applications right now, that's kind of getting extended to meet our financial situation, and a lot of our awarding is going to fiscal year 25 and beyond. But into the future, we are still looking to get those abbreviated applications constructed within 2 years of the application and awarding. And like Michelle said, we are looking at switching this to a quarterly review cycle. And this is to help kind of us view multiple projects at the same time and look at things on more of a per round basis where we can work on financial stability. Getting into our applications, these applications again are available to all public roadways in Ohio. Typically, we require a 10% match, 90% through our program. There are a couple items that are eligible for 100%, signs, signals, and pavements. And we encourage the use of purchasing contract if that's a signal purchasing contract, some of our pedestrian improvement contracts, and so forth. We do encourage using those contracts to our advantage. And typically we like to stick to construction work, the purchase orders only. We like projects that are limited in design or have no design to them. That's what gives us the quick hit projects that are not very, have a lot of steps to them and not advanced in the process. We are also looking for things that are not maintenance activity. Maintenance activities are not eligible through the safety program. In the abbreviated applications, again, to keep it quick hit, should not have any right-of-way impacts and should not either be complex where multiple departments need to review it, or it's a multi-phase project and this is filling funding gaps. Like I said, starting out, we're looking for improvements that are up to $250,000 or less. Some of these projects that we have funded in the past could be pavement marking, sign upgrades on streets. They could be for pedestrians, some localized improvements where we have a crosswalk that could use an RRFB or need some high visibility striping, to some what we call simple signal improvements, which does not involve replacing cabinets. It does not involve replacing poles. This would be considered adding backplates, but adding backplates to a system that can already support the backplate. So we're not rebuying some infrastructure that's already there. Along with some recent projects with rumble stripes, either the center line rumble stripes, the edge line rumble stripes, and help with some fixed object removal to reduce roadway departure fatalities and crashes. So getting into the application, what do I need for submission? So First is summarizing and connecting the crash pattern to what you're requesting. So without having a connection on the safety benefit, this provides, having this allows us to understand the severity of the location and also what we're looking to do at the location. And we also need to know how this will solve the crash pattern. Knowing that there is a crash pattern, that's just half the battle. We need to make sure we're addressing that crash pattern as well. And to do that, we do have some requirements from on our application form that require a crash summary. We like seeing the cost estimate just so we know all the components, and getting into some projects, if a cost seems off to us, we can understand it better having that cost estimate. And along with the crash is the CAM tool, which is similar to many of our programs, requiring that so we know the crash trends. One thing we added, or two things we added, is our safety key metrics, which is dealing with some equity and the area around, but then also the addressing our SHSP emphasis areas. So Michelle mentioned, we report out to the federal highway and we have these goals through our SHSP program. We need to know kind of what we're addressing in those programs with our funding. And with that being said, Michelle, I'm going to pass the presentation off to Derek then, where he's going to talk about our formal applications.
Here we go. All right. Thanks, John. So I'm going to discuss the formal application, the one that has been around the longest, and really is the one that we're trying to invest a lot of our money on, that along with the systemic program. So I got to click right over here. There we go. All right. So these are the complex safety projects. So the way I look at this program is it's really to capture anything that can't be applied for through, or is not eligible for our abbreviated application, and is not eligible or doesn't fit the facilities in our systemic program. So this would be our catch-all project button. So these can be complex. We have reduced the max due to our budget shortfalls. As Michelle alluded to, there's only $30 million for this in this October round, and next August is our plan as a cap. So it's not going to be, it wouldn't be a lot of projects if everybody asked for $10 million. So we have increased changed the threshold to be eligible. There is a requirement of 3 crashes per year, and we're usually a 3 to 5 year period, but we want to make it general so you could use different year ranges. And we are now going to require a 30% fatal and injuries, and so not just serious injury, but all total injuries at your location. So those two must be met to actually be eligible for this funding program. We're looking, I'll get into this a little bit more later, but we're looking to reduce the local match for economically distressed communities, and we have some metrics on how we're going to do that, but we're not sure how much money is available. So it's never a guarantee. So it's going to be a cycle by cycle as we go through that, and once that money runs out, there's no more money to use. So it's not like it's still accumulating in another way. So, but as Michelle said earlier, the applications for this year is still September 30th. It will be a $30 million cap, but next year we're moving to August 31st as our funding round. So just be aware of that. These projects, this funding is eligible for all public roads, which I'm sure that's why we have a mix of people attending today. And again, it's a 90% federal, 10% match typically. Same thing that John just described to us. And these funds can be used in all phases. Although right now, because of our budgetary issues, we're hoping that maybe we can invest our funds later in the project. And I know this isn't the usual safety. We usually front load a lot of our funding to match MPO money, but we're looking to maybe switch that for a couple of years so we can continue to get projects in the pipeline for construction in 25 and 26. So really that's where we're targeting these projects in FY 25 and 26. when you're applying for them, apply for when you actually think you can deliver the projects, and we will adjust those fiscal years as we see our funding projections change. So magically a transportation infrastructure bill gets passed, more funding may be available, and now our year shifts. So we want to make sure that we understand when you can actually deliver it and your priorities on these projects. Again, like I said, this is really the catch-all program. So if it doesn't fit abbreviated and it doesn't fit the systemic program, then this is really your program. So we have capped it at $5 million again, but roundabouts, turn lanes, sight distance improvements, all the usual things. This is probably where most of the intersection and corridor projects will fall. But there definitely will be some projects that either don't fit the systemic program or they're over the caps of the systemic program. And so those are welcome to come here and apply for funding and get it reviewed with this program. And then, so as I mentioned earlier, we did change the threshold to be 3 crashes in a 5-year period with, again, and 30% fatal in all injury crashes. And then for the scoring criteria, I think this is probably the biggest change. Those projects with that are focused on capacity, or we used to have a volume to capacity ratio, those will no longer be awarded points. Again, we're more trying to focus on injury and severity location. So as you see, our highest point value now goes to the number of fatal and serious injuries. And the change in the scoring criteria really was intended to match our decisions better. And so last time, if you got a 50, and I understand this will probably still be approximately the same, if you got a 50, that was doing pretty well, because half the points score well for urban and half the points score well for rural. But I just want you to be aware that is our critical path of why we made these changes. The potential for safety improvement is still the same as last time. I think the points value changed. There's a couple changes to relative severity index and equivalent property damage only index. So while the calculation's still the same, Caroline and I are using that link down at the bottom, the new methods to calculating crash costs, and that's kind of how those get developed. That's in the calculations to develop the base criteria for those. So those will change a little bit, not dramatically, but overall it will slightly adjust some of your scores. The other thing with relative severity index, there are indexes per district now. It's not just statewide, so you will be able to get a better idea on how much these crash costs are per jurisdiction. I was going to do it by county, and then the file size doubled, and I went back to county or district because they weren't dramatically different results. So I did play around with trying to even go farther down, and we can discuss that as we move forward in the program. Finally, I'll get to location equity measure later, but the other thing missing from this list is the benefit cost ratio. So this was highly debated, but while it is a great indicator on what the safety benefits are and what our investment should be, it's not a great indicator on what projects we would like to invest in, right? So while the safety program and the funding committee or selection committee makes decisions on we want to invest in this project, then we make a decision how much, if it's the whole amount or if it's a lesser amount. And so that's where we use the benefit cost. It's not really used as a tool to make the decision on what the investment should, or whether we should invest or not invest in this project. So that's gone. The other change to the benefit cost that I want to mention is there will be no more essentially safety benefits awarded to reducing PDO crashes. This is done by other states, and we thought it was in line with everything else we were doing here. So it wasn't a lot of money to start with. It's 8,000-ish about per crash. It shouldn't impact the results dramatically, but it does reinforce the fact that we want to look at fatal and injury crashes with our program. For the equity measure, go on, change. There we go. All right. So this is, we did a lot of different criteria, and we actually simplified it because we're getting similar results or close to the same results with more complicated processes. So we're only using poverty, and though in kind of see the chart in the bottom. Hopefully it's not as small as my screen. But will be awarded up to 10 points based on the percent poverty within a block group. And this is from the American Community Survey. I believe it's the 5-year average. But right now I put a link, and this might not be in the PDF, so I'll try to put it, or I'll have Victoria put it in the chat pod. Here, there's a KMZ file that is currently available for you to use to get this value. However, the KMZ file was huge when I included all the block groups. So this only includes block groups that are eligible for points. So if you're not covered, you're not eligible for any points. So you can just leave it blank. You can put 9. It's okay. We won't hold you to that value if it's not getting a score this year or this round. The other thing I wanted to say, which eludes me. Let's see if it's over here. Oh, let me go back. And so at times your project's either long or you're in a quadrant and you're touched by multiple of these areas, right? So we just want you to pick the maximum percentage that touches your project, like abuts it, whatever. And so just to simplify it, that's all spelled out in the safety analysis guidelines as well. So if you need a reference, that has been updated with all these scoring criteria and everything and all these program items today. But in the future, we're going to have this fancy map viewer for safety. It's currently in dev. There's a couple comments that Jeremy and I provided back. So once that gets done, it'll be released. And this both replaces, remember, 2-3 years ago, we used to have Google Maps that you could use to get your priority locations. So that will be in here along with all the key metrics, the locations of the systemic priorities, all of ODOT's projects. So if you have a project and you want to know if it's on a priority list, that's here, that and just general jurisdiction boundaries. So it's meant to be an iterative thing. So this is a start, and then we'll get people using it and get a list of requests and kind of expand it as we go through time. But it's in development. The other thing I want to highlight is how we're trying to determine who gets a reduced local match. So I believe it's the auditor's office, yes, has, I'm getting old now, I had to zoom in like Michelle does, jeez, sorry Michelle. They have a list of local governments in and by fiscal distress, and so we want to use this list as one of our triggers for eligibility. Just because you don't have money for a safety project, it doesn't mean that it isn't needed for your community. And that's why we want to make sure that we're investing in those communities as well. Just a quick summary, not much of this has changed. I think the details of the scores pretty much is the biggest change to this program. So for requirements for this program, safety study that links to the crash pattern and the project request, just makes sense. A statement summary on the project of how the crashes will be reduced or the severity will change, and then verifying the funding request is in line with the safety needs. So if you're asking for not this much and really the value of safety is less, we might adjust our investments. So this part's kind of more basic. The application for this is complete and on the website, and we're working on the applications for everyone as well. So with that, I will hand it over to Jeremy. And Jeremy, hold on while I turn off my camera and mic.
All right. Thanks, Derek. Yeah, in this little presentation, I'm going to go through our new application type, the systemic application. And since it's new, I just kind of want to cover what a systemic safety approach is before getting into the application itself. So it's implementing proactive safety treatments along roadway features that are associated with specific crash types. So rather than chasing crashes and waiting for crashes to occur or trying to get ahead of it, be proactive and implement these countermeasures before they occur. And it should be focused on proven safety countermeasures so we know we are addressing the potential for these crashes to occur. Looking at the circle chart on the left there, this application is largely revolved around the 2 blue circles on the right. So we are going to be asking project sponsors to prioritize candidate locations within their jurisdiction, and select the countermeasures by site to apply for. All the other circles are basically handled by us. And similar to the other applications, where these are open to projects in all public roadways, there are some criteria that these should meet based on roadway features, and I'll get into that. We typically ask for a 10% match. That match can be reduced for sign signals, pavement markings, and it can also be reduced using the equity criteria that Derek just discussed. The systemic application is targeting roadway departure and pedestrian safety projects. And we really want to focus on providing new and upgraded infrastructure through this. So it shouldn't be used as a maintenance program, and applications could be supplements to larger projects that have already been planned or programmed, like adding a road diet or shoulder to resurfacing projects. And I guess on the topic of maintenance, we say that we don't want to go replace transverse crosswalk markings with more transverse crosswalk markings. If you're upgrading transverse markings to ladder style high vis crosswalks, that's another story. So the two types, roadway departure projects can be funded up to $5 million, and pedestrian projects up to $2 million. That's mostly because the infrastructure type or countermeasures that go in for that are used for each project type are cost different amounts. A shoulder is more expensive than pedestrian crossings, so we can hit a ton of locations for each one using those caps. Example of some pedestrian projects we'd like to see are city, county, or region-wide pedestrian crossing upgrades, or some corridor or segment-based sidewalk projects. For roadway departure applications, shoulder widening is eligible, rumble stripes or strips, and clearing the clear zone of fixed objects. So the eligible roadway features within this program for the pedestrian application type are functional classification is 3, 4, and 5, which are principal and minor arterials and major collectors. That also applies to the roadway departure application. The speed limit should be between 25 and 45 miles per hour, or the posted speed limit for pedestrian sites, and the active transportation need and demand scores should be greater than 5. Those scores were done by Walk Bike Ohio a little over a year ago and are in our traffic information management system, as well as that safety map viewer Derek talked about. And basically the need score is highly equity based, and the demand score is more of a potential demand score and is based on the amount of pedestrian generators within a census block group. For roadway departure projects, I mentioned the functional classifications that are eligible, and the speed limits posted 35 or over in urban or suburban settings and 45 or over in rural settings. And we want to promote the use of proven safety countermeasures through this program. So those listed on the screen right now are what we would like to see these applications have. If project sponsors can think of more that are proven safety countermeasures, then we welcome those. But we think we have pretty solid lists here of ideas for both pedestrian crossing improvements and ways to mitigate roadway departure crashes. So these applications are due January 31st of 2022 for the first pilot round. And the information needed is a little less than the formal application, but a little more than the abbreviated application. We'll need a prioritized list of locations with desired countermeasures. We understand for roadway departure projects that there might not be a list of locations. It might just be one long corridor segment. So that might not be needed for those, where that would fall into that second bullet, where we would ask for a statement or summary of the project, what improvements are going in, where they're going in, how they're addressing the safety problem. And then we just verifying that the funding request is in line with the safety need, which if you're applying for a project on those eligible roadway features and using those proven safety countermeasures, that bullet should be good. And then the requirements listed there below in the gray box, the application form, it'll be similar to the other two types. It's still in development. The priority list that I mentioned, a certified cost estimate, just so we can properly program the project. A CAM tool or a CAPE tool. The CAPE tool is newer. It's a more of a planning level crash overview tool that even we don't care about the crash numbers for these sites because it is a proactive systemic program. But we would like to see the safety concern in the area, and then those safety key metrics that are in that safety map viewer. And let's see. I think that is all I had for that. I will note that we are targeting fiscal year 25 and beyond for that project as well. I don't think that was on the slides. So we can go into questions, and I'll leave our contact information on the screen.
There you go. So thank you, gentlemen. You did an awesome job of laying out the highlights of the different programs. I've got a few questions that Victoria has queued up in the box for us to consider. The first one I'm going to throw to Derek. Can a data-driven safety analysis be used as the safety study for an abbreviated funding request?
As long as it's in size and scale of the funding request. So I would say if you look in those safety analysis guidelines, anything up to $1 million would not require more of the formal type study. So I would say if it's less than $1 million, then yes, because you should be covering the topics included in the abbreviated study. So.
Derek, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Were you gonna say something?
No, I was just making sure you could hear me.
Yep, we can hear you. Okay. I'll let you know if we can't. Someone said, can you share the link to the safety map viewer, Derek?
Yeah.
In some form or fashion. Okay. Jonathan, this one's for you. Do the
not
abbreviated,
the
what'd you say?
It's not done. I can't do the map viewer. I can do the equity thing. The map viewer is not available yet.
Okay, is it available on the website, or it will be available on the website in the future?
It will be available on the website in the future. I'm getting the equity one now.
Okay. Okay. Jonathan, let's see. Do the abbreviated safety applications have to be submitted each quarter or just once?
So each quarter they have to be submitted, and I forgot to mention, we accept applications all year round. They just are reviewed on a quarterly basis. So, but yes, to answer the question, they have to be submitted each round. So each quarter, if it's denied, say in the fall for eligibility and for consideration for the winter, it needs to be resubmitted for that round.
Thank you, Jonathan. Derek, for the crash number / percent of serious and or fatal crashes on the formal application, will that be waived for non-motorized projects similar to the abbreviated application?
Most likely, and it's not serious injury, it's fatal and all injury for the application, the 30%. But everything can be under consideration. If it's non-motorized, we're hoping it should go through the systemic program, so that shouldn't be a problem moving forward, is kind of our initiative. So we should have very limited number of those requests.
Once again, Derek, how many years of crash data is reviewed in the application process? There's some ambiguity there. Maybe you could just touch on that.
Correct. So we made it 3 crashes per year as a minimum. And typically you're either in urban settings, you're using 3 crashes, or rural settings, you tend to use 3 years of crashes, and rural, you'll use maybe 5. Really, all we need is enough crashes to develop a pattern. So if, say, you did a project 2 years ago and you want to use only 2, now this criteria still can apply to that, because any crash history prior to that would not kind of match the current trends. So we wanted to make sure we're flexible. I know sometimes there's detours through routes and you're using like 1.5 years and it just gets really messy. But that's why we kind of changed their criteria, because we tend to see 3 years in urban and 5 years in rural, just to make sure that we have a good pattern in the rural sites.
Thanks, Derek.
Mhm.
Maybe Jeremy can address this one. I see the AT demand and need maps in TIMS, but what score do you input into the application? They are shown as low, medium, high, and very high on maps. Is that you or Derek?
Yeah, I can answer that. It'll be a little easier to tell in that safety map viewer that's soon to be released. But if you go into the info, it's like the little eye with a circle button at the top left in TIMS, and click on it and scroll down. There's the scores, the 1 through 4 for each type. So as long as those two add up to 5, that's what we're looking for. That being said, if you have a large project and a couple locations don't meet that goal, it likely won't deter us from approving the application.
Okay, just a little shout out to my colleague Brian Blaney says that map viewer, that safety map viewer looks awesome. So good job.
We're trying.
Systemic safety question here, John. Would multi-use paths be included similar to, or I'm sorry, this is a systemic question, not an abbreviated. That's Jeremy. Once again, I screwed up the two of you. Anyway, systemic question. Would a multi-use path be included similar to sidewalks? Jeremy.
I guess maybe, yeah, if it's the appropriate safety countermeasure for that area, and you describe that in your problem statement, then I would say yes.
Someone asked, we have received approval for an abbreviated HSIP for fiscal year 23. Will there be any changes, or are we good under the existing program? If we approved you, you are good under the existing program. What are the quarterly dates for the abbreviated applications, Jonathan?
They're on the fact sheets on the website.
Yeah,
for sure.
It is on the fact sheets on our website. I'm trying to do my math in my head because Derek and I both messed up the math the other day.
Okay.
It is. Oh, it's the end of. It's the end of June, and then every 3 months. So what's that? July, end of June, end of September, end of December, end of March. Did I do my math right?
Let me just put it to you this way. It will be on the fact sheet located on the website.
Thank you, Michelle.
Accurate information, go to the website. Can't give it to you on the fly. Let's see here. Will a recording of the webinar be available to attendees to share with other staff? I believe so. Yes, Victoria? A recording of the webinar will be available, correct?
Yes, sorry, I had to get to my unmute.
Okay.
We'll be sending a link out to everybody after the webinar completes.
Okay, sweet. Would pedestrian beacons or HAWKs also qualify? I assume this is under abbreviated. Would that qualify, or it could be under both programs? I don't know. Anybody want to take that one?
If it's the kind of the recommended countermeasure for the HAWK compared to an RRFB, it would be under consideration for the abbreviated. I imagine the same for systemic.
Yeah, it's in the list of proven safety countermeasures that we're providing for that are eligible under the systemic program.
Okay, Jeremy, our old friend and colleague says she wants, Julie Walkoff, I should say who it is, wants to hear more about the CAPE tool. Can you tell us?
Hey, Julie. Yeah, sure. So the CAPE tool, similar to the CAM tool, if you've used that before, you take GCAT data from TIMS and upload it, and it spits out all these charts and graphs and stuff. It's more planning level. You use a county-wide or region-wide crash data to do that. If you've ever seen a county or regional safety plan, all those types of charts and graphs, so covering our various SHSP emphasis area, covering levels of exposure. There's ways to put in the like population metrics of the county or region that you're covering, as well as VMT. So more a planning level assessment of a whole county or region, focusing on emphasis areas, crash types, and measures of exposure.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Hey, Michelle, real quick.
Yeah.
I did check. It is the end of March, June, September, and December for the abbreviated applications.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that follow-up. Derek, I'm going to throw this one to you. Curtis Dybel wants to know, hi Curtis, has a decision been made regarding the 2020 crash year? Should we include 2020 crashes in a safety application since it was such an abnormal year from a traffic safety perspective?
So we know that the frequencies will likely be lower, but severity went up. So it's a mixed bag. So if in 2020 your crash pattern does not match the 3 or 5 years before that, maybe not include it. But if it does continue to match, then you are welcome to include it. I don't know that we're going to make a determination statewide for that. I think it's really site by site and what's going on in your locale.
Hey, this
we'll welcome older years too, I guess is a nicer way to say that.
Hey, this is a good question. Where is the link to the website Michelle keeps referencing?
I put the link in the chat pod for your
Okay, thank you, dude.
Victoria.
Appreciate it. I'm just going through here to see if I missed anything. Okay, yeah. I think that might be it, folks. Indeed, I think that's it. So first of all, kudos to my team here. My teammates did an awesome job today in laying out the highlights. I really appreciate it. Good job, folks. Again, if you have specific questions about sites or potential projects, feel free to reach out to the appropriate person who talked about the appropriate application cycle, or if you just don't know what application cycle you want, give me a call or send me an email.
Victoria, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Everybody can ignore that last post. I was trying to get you the actual link to the safety website. Go ahead, Derek.
You'll have the list of people that attended it, so when the map viewer is available, we can use that list to ship that out to everyone as well. Okay.
Absolutely.
We'll just send out the map viewer to everyone once it's posted publicly, just so you're aware.
And here's the link to the safety website. Michelle sent this out yesterday afternoon because they had just posted new fact sheets as well. So the other link that I sent out earlier in the chat was the link to the tool that Derek had talked about. So you should have both of those links now, and I'll make sure to send out both those links on the follow-up email for everybody.
Great, thank you, Victoria. Hey, one more shout out to our district safety staff. Our colleagues really worked hard. There was a tremendous amount of back and forth on, revamping the criteria, the scoring. A lot of thought and effort went into the final product that you're seeing. And I want to thank the district offices for all their hard work in helping us get there. It took some time, but I think we got there. So with that, let's all hope for a federal transportation bill and some more money for safety. But that concludes our webinar today, and we'll talk to you soon.